Day 161. 2 Chronicles 34-36. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and walked in the ways of his father David. He did not turn aside to the right or to the left. In the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, Josiah began to seek the God of his father David, and in the 12th year he began to cleanse Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherah poles, the carved idols, and the cast images. Then in his presence the altars of the Baals were torn down, and he cut to pieces the incense altars that were above them. He shattered the Asherah poles, the carved idols, and the cast images, crushed them to dust, and scattered them over the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. Then he burned the bones of the priests on their altars. So he cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. Josiah did the same in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, as far as Naphtali, and in the ruins around them. He tore down the altars and Asherah poles, crushed the idols to powder, and cut to pieces all the incense altars throughout the land of Israel. Then he returned to Jerusalem. Now in the 18th year of his reign, in order to cleanse the land and the temple, Josiah sent Shaphan son of Azaliah, Maaseiah the governor of the city, and Joah son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of the Lord his God. So they went to Hilkiah the high priest and gave him the money that had been brought into the house of God, which the Levites at the doors had collected from the people of Manasseh and Ephraim, from all the remnant of Israel, Judah and Benjamin, and from the people of Jerusalem. They put it into the hands of the supervisors of those doing the work of the house of the Lord, who in turn gave it to the workmen restoring and repairing the house of the Lord. They also gave money to the carpenters and builders to buy dressed stone, as well as timbers for couplings and beams for the buildings that the kings of Judah had allowed to deteriorate. And the men did the work faithfully. The Levites overseeing them were Jahath and Obadiah, descendants of Merari, and Zechariah and Meshullam, descendants of Kohath. Other Levites, all skilled with musical instruments, were over the laborers and supervised all who did the work, task by task. Some of the Levites were secretaries, officers, and gatekeepers. While they were bringing out the money that had been taken into the house of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord written by Moses. And Hilkiah said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And he gave it to Shaphan. Then Shaphan brought the book to the king and reported, Your servants are doing all that has been placed in their hands. They have paid out the money that was found in the house of the Lord and have put it into the hands of the supervisors and workers. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes and commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam son of Shaphan, Abdon son of Micah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the servant of the king, Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for those remaining in Israel and Judah concerning the words in the book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that has been poured out on us because our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord by doing all that is written in this book. So Hilkiah and those the king had designated went and spoke to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum son of Tokath, the son of Hazroch, the keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem, in the 2nd district. And Huldah said to them, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, Tell the man who sent you that this is what the Lord says, I am about to bring calamity on this place and on its people. According to all the curses written in the book that has been read in the presence of the king of Judah, because they have forsaken me and burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. My wrath will be poured out upon this place and will not be quenched. But as for the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of the Lord, tell him that this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, as for the words that you heard. Because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its people, and because you have humbled yourself before me and you have torn your clothes and wept before me, I have heard you, declares the Lord. Now I will indeed gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes will not see all the calamity that I will bring on this place and on its inhabitants. So they brought her answer back to the king. Then the king summoned all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. And he went up to the house of the Lord with all the people of Judah and Jerusalem, as well as the priests and the Levites, all the people small and great, and in their hearing he read all the words of the book of the covenant that had been found in the house of the Lord. So the king stood by the pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments, decrees, and statutes with all his heart and all his soul, and to carry out the words of this covenant that were written in this book. Then he had everyone in Jerusalem and Benjamin take a stand in agreement to it. So all the people of Jerusalem carried out the covenant of God, the God of their fathers. And Josiah removed all the abominations from all the lands belonging to the Israelites, and he required everyone in Israel to serve the Lord their God. Throughout his reign they did not turn aside from following the Lord, the God of their fathers. Then Josiah celebrated the Passover to the Lord in Jerusalem, and the Passover lamb was slaughtered on the 14th day of the first month. He appointed the priests to their duties and encouraged them in the service of the house of the Lord. To the Levites who taught all Israel and were holy to the Lord, Josiah said, "Put the holy ark in the temple built by Solomon son of David king of Israel. It is not to be carried around on your shoulders. Now serve the Lord your God and his people Israel. Prepare yourselves by families in your divisions, according to the instructions written by David king of Israel and Solomon his son. Moreover, stand in the holy place by the divisions of the families of your kinsmen the lay people, and by the divisions of the families of the Levites. Slaughter the Passover lambs, consecrate yourselves, and make preparations for your fellow countrymen to carry out the word of the Lord given by Moses." From his own flocks and herds Josiah contributed 30,000 lambs and goats plus 3,000 bulls for the Passover offerings for all the people who were present. His officials also contributed willingly to the people and priests and Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Jehiel, the administrators of the house of God, gave the priests 2,600 Passover offerings and 300 bulls. Additionally, Conaniah and his brothers Shemaiah and Nethanel, as well as Hashabiah, Jeiel, and Jozabad, officers of the Levites, donated to the Levites 5,000 Passover offerings and 500 bulls. So the service was prepared, the priests stood in their places and the Levites in their divisions according to the king's command. And they slaughtered the Passover lambs, while the priests sprinkled the blood handed to them and the Levites skinned the animals. They set aside the burnt offerings to be given to the divisions of the families of the people to offer to the Lord, as is written in the book of Moses, and they did the same with the bulls. They roasted the Passover animals on the fire according to the regulation, and they boiled the other holy offerings in pots, kettles, and bowls and quickly brought them to all the people. Afterward, they made preparations for themselves and for the priests, since the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were offering up burnt offerings and fat until nightfall. So the Levites made preparations for themselves and for the priests, the descendants of Aaron. The singers, the descendants of Asaph, were at their stations according to the command of David, Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun the king's seer. And the gatekeepers at each gate did not need to leave their position, because their fellow Levites made preparations for them. So on that day the entire service of the Lord was carried out for celebrating the Passover and offering burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord, according to the command of King Josiah. The Israelites who were present also observed the Passover at that time, as well as the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days. No such Passover had been observed in Israel since the days of Samuel the prophet. None of the kings of Israel ever observed a Passover like the one that Josiah observed with the priests, the Levites, all Judah, the Israelites who were present, and the people of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, this Passover was observed. After all this, when Josiah had set the temple in order, Necho king of Egypt marched up to fight at Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to confront him. But Necho sent messengers to him, saying, "What is the issue between you and me, O king of Judah? I have not come against you today, but I am fighting another dynasty. God told me to hurry, so stop opposing God, who is with me, or he will destroy you." Josiah, however, did not turn away from him. Instead, in order to engage him in battle, he disguised himself. He did not listen to Necho's words from the mouth of God, but went to fight him on the plain of Megiddo. There the archers shot King Josiah, who said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am badly wounded." So his servants took him out of his chariot, put him in his second chariot, and brought him to Jerusalem, where he died. And Josiah was buried in the tomb of his fathers, and all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for him. Then Jeremiah lamented over Josiah, and to this day all the choirs of men and women sing laments over Josiah. They established them as a statute for Israel, and indeed they are written in the book of laments. As for the rest of the acts of Josiah, along with his deeds of loving devotion according to what is written in the law of the Lord, his acts from beginning to end, they are indeed written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Then the people of the land took Joahaz son of Josiah and made him king in Jerusalem in place of his father. Joahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And the king of Egypt dethroned him in Jerusalem and imposed on Judah a levy of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Then Necho king of Egypt made Eliakim brother of Joahaz king over Judah and Jerusalem, and he changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. But Necho took Eliakim's brother Joahaz and carried him off to Egypt. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Then Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up against Jehoiakim and bound him with bronze shackles to take him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took to Babylon some of the articles from the house of the Lord, and he put them in his temple in Babylon. As for the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim, the abominations he committed, and all that was found against him, they are indeed written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And his son Jehoiachin reigned in his place. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months and 10 days. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. In the spring, King Nebuchadnezzar summoned Jehoiachin and brought him to Babylon, along with the articles of value from the house of the Lord. And he made Jehoiachin's relative Zedekiah king over Judah and Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord his God and did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke for the Lord. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by God. But Zedekiah stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to the Lord, the God of Israel. Furthermore, all the leaders of the priests and the people multiplied their unfaithful deeds, following all the abominations of the nations, and they defiled the house of the Lord, which he had consecrated in Jerusalem. Again and again the Lord, the God of their fathers, sent word to his people through his messengers because he had compassion on them and on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of God, despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord against his people was stirred up beyond remedy. So he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who put their young men to the sword in the sanctuary, sparing neither young men nor young women, neither elderly nor infirm. God gave them all into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, who carried off everything to Babylon, all the articles of the house of God, both large and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord and of the king and his officials. Then the Chaldeans set fire to the house of God and broke down the wall of Jerusalem. They burned down all the palaces and destroyed every article of value. Those who escaped the sword were carried by Nebuchadnezzar into exile in Babylon, and they became servants to him and his sons until the kingdom of Persia came to power. So the land enjoyed its Sabbath rest all the days of the desolation, until 70 years were completed, in fulfillment of the word of the Lord through Jeremiah. In the first year of Cyrus king of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken through Jeremiah, the Lord stirred the spirit of Cyrus king of Persia to send a proclamation throughout his kingdom and to put it in writing as follows: This is what Cyrus king of Persia says, the Lord, the God of heaven, who has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, has appointed me to build a house for him at Jerusalem in Judah. Whoever among you belongs to his people, may the Lord his God be with him, and may he go up. John 19 verses 1-22. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns, set it on his head, and dressed him in a purple robe. And they went up to him again and again, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And slapping him in the face. Once again Pilate came out and said to the Jews, Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him. When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, Here is the man. As soon as the chief priests and officers saw him, they shouted, Crucify him! Crucify him! You take him and crucify him, Pilate replied, for I find no basis for a charge against him. We have a law, answered the Jews, and according to that law he must die, because he declared himself to be the Son of God. When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. And he went back into the praetorium. Where are you from? He asked. But Jesus gave no answer. So Pilate said to him, Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you? Jesus answered, You would have no authority over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore the one who handed me over to you is guilty of greater sin. From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews kept shouting, If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is defying Caesar. When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, which in Hebrew is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation for the Passover, about the 6th hour. And Pilate said to the Jews, "Here is your king." At this, they shouted, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him! Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," replied the chief priests. Then Pilate handed Jesus over to be crucified, and the soldiers took him away. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had a notice posted on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read the sign, because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write, 'the King of the Jews,' but only that he said, 'I am the King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written."